How are
Thanks,
you
Chelsea.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. Yes,
Super.
I'm very excited. So for the question portion of this segment, we're putting them into a bit of some themes. And this first one is about analyzing the options before applying to graduate schools. And so if you don't mind, we can just get right started on this interview. All right, so the first question here is that for many people, including myself, we debate whether it would be better to gain relevant experience in the workplace or in other related fields before applying for graduate school. What advice would you give individuals who debate taking a gap year before applying to grad school?
Yeah, that's a really common question that often gets posed. And I know even with myself, like, thinking back when I was trying to decide when to go to graduate school, I wasn't quite sure in terms of what would be the best time for me. And I think honestly, for everyone, it's a really personal decision. Unless, there are some programs that are professional-based programs where there are requirements for gaining a specific amount of experience before one can apply. So as it so happens, that was the type of program that I applied to, which I needed a minimum of 1 year experience. So for me, it ended up being determined that I needed to take a couple of years off before going back to my master's and gaining some relevant experience to actually get into the program. For others, I think it would be really a good idea to just ask, consider and reflect what you would like to gain during that year. Certainly, people choose to do both options for different reasons. And I think one of the first things just really to consider is there some experiences that one wants to gain during that year off that they think would help them maybe grow as an individual, or maybe it's earn some money or clarify their educational goals. There's a lot of different reasons. And I think it's important to sort of just reflect on those, because there's no right or wrong answer.
That is so true, and it definitely will be different for each person. So thank you for that. And just as a follow-up question related to the first one we just asked, some people believe that they may never actually apply to grad school if they don't do it right out of their undergrad. What would you recommend for these people?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. And it's one that always makes me really curious about what are the reasons why. You may not think you might apply if you don't do it right away. I think, in some cases, taking some time off can, as I mentioned before, clarify what one's educational and career goals are to begin with. And also sometimes that experience actually leads to a richer experience in graduate studies as well, depending on what you've learned about yourself during that year, because there is a lot to be learned sort of in the world of work, for sure. So I think, again, it is something that is very unique to everybody. But I think probably, if you really want to do it, I think you will. And there's no time frame associated with needing to go to grad school. I've known folks that have gone right after, or 10 years after, or 20 years after graduation. So I think it all depends on that individual's self-motivation.
That's very clarifying. And just as a third question here, personally, I'm concerned about financing my education after undergrad and applying to attend graduate school. So what advice would you recommend or give to students who are worried about financing their further education?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And it's so important because it does add up, especially after you've finished 4 years of undergrad. A couple of things that I would suggest right off the bat is once you decide what type of programs you're applying to, then start uncovering what the options are for funding. So say, I'll speak sort of in general terms. So if you were, say, applying to a program that was a thesis-based program where you're going to be conducting some research, let's say, know that some of the larger scholarships are going to be applied to before one gets accepted into that program. So we're talking the big scholarships, like if you're in social sciences, SHRC, or NSERC if you're in the sciences. And then there's the big one, the OGS, the Ontario Graduate Scholarship, that has deadlines in the fall. And because most of the deadlines for grad schools they vary a lot, but it's not uncommon for folks that I talk to miss those deadlines because they didn't realize they were so early. So that's number one. Number two, certainly look at the schools that you're applying to and take a look at their financial aid websites. They usually have a list of scholarships and funding that you might be able to apply to. There's so many thousands of dollars of scholarships that go unclaimed every year. So if you spend some time and do some research and even be ready to invest some time to write, say, statements of interest or complete the requirements of the scholarships, it could be really good time invested. Thirdly, recognize you can apply for OSAP, so you could consider that. And then the other kind of consideration is that many programs do offer some funding. So upon acceptance, some programs may offer scholarships or guaranteed teaching assistantship or research assistantship that's geared towards helping you fund your education. So there is a lot of variety in terms of how you can fund your grad education. So just do the digging and be very open to talking with some of the financial representatives in the department and the program you're applying to.
There's so much to consider when applying to graduate school. So getting a head start definitely seems like a really good thing to keep in mind as students watch this interview. So this is great information.